En termes cronològics, el nou periodisme arriba després de la literatura de la generació Beat, de Kerouac, Ginsberg, etc. Volia preguntar-li si hi ha alguna relació entre els dos corrents literaris i, sobretot, si la visió crítica del sistema que tenia la generació Beat està també present al nou periodisme i, en cas afirmatiu, com?
Frankly, I don't think there's any connection at all. The new journalism, which I didn't name, came from straight out of newspapers and magazines. And I first got some notion of it from reading work by Gay Talese and Jimmy Breslin. I'll give you just one example. Gay Talese was working on the New York Times. I was working on the New York Herald Tribune. So we were rivals. We covered the same kinds of stories. And one day I picked up Esquire magazine. And Gay was always writing these magnificent pieces for Esquire to try to show the New York Times they should be using him better. Of course, they resented it, but anyway. He wrote a story in which it was entitled Joe Louis at 50, the great boxer, Joe Louis. And it began with Joe Louis on an airplane descending into Los Angeles. And when he reaches the ground, waiting for him at the gate is his wife. And she says, Joe, what's happened to you? You don't even have your necktie on. And he said, oh, I was up late last night, honey, and I just didn't get everything arranged. And she said, he said, I'm 50 years old. And she said, yeah, but when you go to New York, you think you're 25. And you come back out here to Los Angeles, you're 75. I couldn't believe a piece of journalism, a nonfiction piece of journalism, could begin that way. I thought he made it up. But he didn't make it up. He stayed with Joe Louis. He hung around Joe Louis for days. And when Joe Louis was going to Los Angeles on the airplane, he took the seat next to him. And that kind of thing made it possible to write a journalism that's full of dialogue.
El nou periodisme es diu que va ser oblidar-se de totes les normes periodístiques preexistents. Però, dit això, també és veritat que el nou periodisme tenia, si més no, les seves tècniques. I, per exemple, com vostè deia ara, una de les tècniques era l'exposició escena a escena, que és un costum cinematogràfic, posar-hi molt diàleg, diferents punts de vista i, sobretot, una atenció molt gran al detall de les situacions. Perquè, segons ha dit vostè, els detalls de la conducta dels protagonistes de la història ens ho diuen tot. És així, realment?
Oh, I think there's no question that one of the reasons that realistic novels in the past have been so effective is that you have the feeling anyway that you're getting inside the mind. You're not just describing the history of a person, you're getting inside the mind. And I thought the great test for journalism was to do the same thing. Instead of saying two bandits robbed a liquor store in Queens, as part of New York, let's have something about what it felt like to the proprietor or the employee behind the counter with two revolvers pointed at him. Excuse me, I keep, it's not really a tick that I have. Okay. It's still coming down. But, this is analog, you know, it's not digital. No.
Parlem ara sobre la seva obra. Vostè diu que per ser un bon periodista n'hi ha prou amb ser al lloc, tenir els ulls oberts i prendre nota de tot. Suposo que això és també el que va fer per escriure Ponche de ácido lisérgico sobre la vida psicodèlica de Ken Kesey i la seva tribu, però mirant-s'ho una mica des de fora. sense compartir, per exemple, les seves drogues, que era un dels punts principals de la seva activitat. En canvi, el seu col·lega gay Talís, al que abans s'ha referit, per escriure La mujer de tu prójimo, va integrar-se en comunitats de sexe lliure i fins i tot va muntar ell mateix una casa de massatges amb final feliç. S'explica millor una història formant totalment part d'ella o només observant-la?
I've always written, I don't know exactly how it happened, but people I'm so unlike, so not like, hippies, test pilots, astronauts, far from trying to blend in any way. I find it's hopeless for me to try to blend in with any of these interesting groups. And so my approach is the man from Mars. I say, gee, what are you doing? It looks interesting. Tell me about it. And most people have, this is my one contribution to psychology, most people have what I call information compulsion. They love to answer a question if they know the answer. If I'm walking along a street out in Long Island near New York, and a car stops and says, how do you get to Thornhill Street? If I know how to get to Thornhill Street, I can't tell them enough. I say, oh, you go down into the next block, you make a U-turn, you come back up, not the first light, you take the second light and you take a right. By the time I'm finished telling them all I know about this place and how to get to it, they're drumming their fingers on the window. But if I don't know the answer, I go away sulking, saying, who do they think I am, the town geographer? This is just ridiculous. But that's information compulsion. And that's I think it's a journalist's best friend. So it's also a detective's best friend.
Els estudiosos del nou periodisme solen dir que la seva època daurada foren els anys 60-70. I la meva pregunta és què va passar després? Va decaure el nou periodisme, si és que va decaure, per causes externes, com per exemple la televisió, o va perdre vigor tot sol?
There weren't enough editors left, really, who would indulge the techniques of the new journalism. They never liked it because unless it was done by somebody like Jimmy Breslin or Gay Talese, it could be a total disaster. Although Rolling Stone would run stories 8, 10, 12,000 words by Hunter Thompson because readers were not going to stop reading it. They would read it right to the last. But there became this sort of rule of thumb that journalism had to be short.
Quina ha estat la influència real del nou periodisme? Perquè si jo ara llegeixo grans diaris com el New York Times o el Wall Street Journal i veig un reflexe de la tradició clàssica del periodisme anglosaxó, més que del nou periodisme.
Well, that's quite true. The newspapers have never trusted it. For one thing, it has to be awfully good to be printable. And people who try and just don't get it are a real embarrassment. And there are some people today who continue it. And I see it mostly in long form, such as books. One, I would say the outstanding writer in the United States right now is Michael Lewis, who writes nonfiction. He wrote a book called Liar's Poker, which was about Wall Street. He's written a book called Moneyball, which was about baseball, but has ramifications far beyond it. He's doing it. There's a man named Mark Bowden, who is, he has written about the turmoil in Somalia. He's written about football. These are all wonderful, these two are wonderful examples of the new journalism. It's not identified as such. You should never name any movement new. you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for death of the movement. There have been 4 new conservatisms in the United States. The 4th one is on now.
Amb aquesta resposta i també amb la resposta a la pregunta anterior ens adonem compte de que l'humor té un paper en la seva literatura. Quin és el paper o la importància que vostè li dona a l'humor com a escriptor?
It's actually irresistible in the modern era. I mean, things you think couldn't possibly be funny are very funny. I mean, and you don't have to stretch the point. When Leonard Bernstein, the great composer and conductor, and his wife gave a party for the Black Panthers in their triplex apartment in the very best part of Park Avenue. Many people thought this was a natural occurrence. Of course, the rich are going to help the poor. But when I heard about it, I was not invited, but I had to be there. So I was wandering in the office of David Halberstam, who was a great journalist. I was actually waiting for my wife to get through. She's the graphic artist at Harper's Magazine. And I happened to notice this invitation to David Halberstam, and it had a number at the bottom that you would call if you accepted the invitation. So I took a chance, and I called him. I said, "My name is Tom Wolfe, and I accept." And sure enough, somebody was obviously taking the names down on a yellow legal pad. And so when I got there, I passed the security check, and my name was on the list. And when I went into this room, and here were people in the social set of Leonard Bernstein, even Barbara Walters, a great television figure in the United States, was there. And here were the Black Panthers in full regalia, lecturing them about how life should be. At one point, the field marshal of the Black Panthers said, "In an apartment like this, it's one family, 40 people should be in this apartment." And Leonard Bernstein, whose apartment it was sitting by a piano wearing a turtleneck, which is unusual for evening wear at those days. Today, T-shirts go, but they were unusual then. And everything the Panther said, he kept saying, "Right on." But he lifted his left fist, "Right on." That was the fist of revolution at that time. I mean, how can one resist this? You don't have to try to be funny. You just record it. And you've got the best humor in the world. You have to have a lot of help from the subjects.
Ara parlarem del seu pas a la novel·la, però abans m'agradaria fer-li algunes preguntes de tipus personal. Vostè s'ha passat la vida observant els demés. Quan es mira a si mateix, què veu? Pot descriure el que veu?
I can describe more or less, and I try to occasionally some television people will approach me and ask if they can follow me on my rounds. And I always tell them, well, I can't have television crew filming when I'm interviewing people on sensitive subjects and so on. But my real fear is that they'll see what a boring life that I personally lead. I mean, thank God I have white suits. I mean, at least that gives me a little bit of splash in the world. But most journalists did not grow up as colorful people. They may be colorful now, but they did not grow up as colorful people. The divide comes on the playground. They're the dominant boys and the others who are not. You can't say much else about them, but they're not dominant. They're the people who end up as journalists. And they cut the ground out from the bullies who, it all starts on the playground. And that's why negative work is the glory of journalism. I probably shouldn't put it that way because I'm a journalist, but I'm just trying to answer your question honestly.
Yeah. Vostè ha mencionat la seva vestimenta, que és molt peculiar. Li volia preguntar, la va triar perquè, com deia Thomas Fuller, un bon vestuari obre totes les portes, o perquè volia definir una marca pròpia, o com una declaració de principis en una època en la que ja es començava a imposar la vestimenta informal?
I wish I could say that I had a principle. It happened by accident. I've been aiming to get a job in New York for 10 years, working on papers, little newspapers, middle-sized newspapers. I finally got a job. It was in June of 1962. And in New York, June can be a very hot month. And those days, reporters had to wear jackets and neckties. Today, you're looked upon as a weird animal if you show up in journalism with a necktie. But anyway, that's a separate problem. I had only 2 jackets, and so I went into a store and I bought a white suit because in the southern part of the United States, where I grew up, in the summertime, it was so hot before air conditioning that men, respectable men, always wore either seersucker, which is very thin cotton, or they'd wear linen, white linen. And so I got what I thought was the equivalent of a white linen suit. But it turned out to be white silk tweed, which is a very hot material, any kind of tweed. Silk tweed is very heavy material. And I couldn't wear it in the summertime, so I started wearing it in late November. And people were affronted by this, very conventionally cut, but it was white and it was November. And for the first time in my life, getting dressed in the morning became interesting. I don't know what this says about me, but...
Entenent-lo, la narrativa amb un sentit ampli. Als anys 60 i 70 el nou periodisme estava a l'avantguarda de la narració del que passava. Ara potser podríem dir que la narració de la realitat més a la moda, encara que molt empeltada de ficció, és a les sèries televisives. I està d'acord amb això? Li interessa alguna de les sèries?
I must confess, I never watched TV series except The Simpsons. I think The Simpsons are terrific, and I'll go out of my way. You'll notice The Simpsons is the only comedy show that have no laugh track. I can't stand laugh tracks. I mean, please don't tell me when to laugh. Just be funny. And The Simpsons have no laugh track. I haven't really watched. There are a lot of popular series now, which apparently are written much better than television shows in the past. Homeland is one that people seem to like a great deal. I must catch that one night. But people say you can't just tune in one night. You have to have seen the whole series. And it goes back 2 years and watch these this many episodes. I don't think there's that much time in a normal life.